Welcome to Body Kindness. I'm Rebecca Scritchfield, creator of the Body Kindness Philosophy book and audiobook. I'm here to help you create a better life by reinventing health from the body oppressive, shaming, and you'll never be enough type of mindset to positive and joyful ways that you can spiral up your energy, mood, and your well being at any size, shape, or weight, and as you are right now. Get started for free at bodykindnessbook.com/start. That's the sound of me smashing a stack of scales in front of some friends. And I have to say that breaking up with the scale and all the other ways I was judging, monitoring, and measuring my worth was absolutely pivotal in my life. Creating the body kindness philosophy and letting myself be a human being again helped me become a better mom, a better clinician, and a happier and healthier person. I believe we all have a right to decide how we want to care for ourselves. And I think we all need support in figuring out what that looks like. You don't have to do this alone. There's a whole community of like-minded people who are fed up with diets, who are embracing intuitive eating, and who are completely redefining their lives from body shame to body kindness. You are not broken. Our culture is. Find your inner caregiver and create a better life with body kindness.
And so the best part about what we're doing at Yoga National is we're also holding our vendors, our partners, and our presenters accountable to the same values.
Yes.
So it can't be a particular person who, because he thinks he's holier than thou, can treat certain people like crap because I'm sanctified in the holy grace of yoga. Right? It's like, no, you actually have to treat everybody along our value systems.
Mm-hmm.
So we're extending this out, not just within ourselves, but also with everyone that we partner with. Mm-hmm. I'm excited about that with Yoga International. And we're redoing things. We're going back with a fine-tooth comb over things that we've done and said, ooh, now with that new lens, I can see how this hurts. Let's pull that. Let's find the right person to talk about that and have the right person talk about that in a way that I'm literally talking about, from courses to classes to little, challenges to the way we perceive things. Your welcoming email to Yoga International is a white woman-centered wellness. Mm-hmm. How about international? Let's show diversity in an international landscape, not just one white woman saying, welcome to the club.
That was Janessa Mondestin. 13 years ago, she received a diagnosis for lupus, an autoimmune condition that motivated her to recommit to wellness. Yoga asana was a way for Janessa to balance her weekend warrior athletic events and the stress from corporate banking. Over time, yoga and ayurveda became a central part of her life, both personally and professionally. She left corporate banking to teach yoga and wellness as an adjunct professor for Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken and adjunct faculty of Uncommon Charter School in Newark, New Jersey. Today, Janessa is the creative producer for Yoga International, yoga talent advocate and business coach, founder of Soulthentic Yoga Registered Yoga School. She is one of the top 20 yoga teachers of color for 2020. She was awarded the title of Yoga Ambassador by India's Travel Ministry and Prime Minister in 2018. Janessa is a practicing yoga therapist who is developing a safe space for women wellness, the Soma Yoga Center. Janessa's experience as a first-generation American-born daughter of immigrants, a sexual assault survivor who overcame racial, cultural, and gender-based adversity, grief, and loss, informs her focus on serving the public with a sense of healing, resiliency, and authenticity. I am so excited to share our conversation with you. This is the second in a two-part conversation around white supremacy and yoga. So the first was with Dr. Sabrina Strings, and this conversation threads nicely because we focus more specifically on the systems and structures. So you'll hear more about what Janessa is able to accomplish in her leadership role, and also she shares some really valuable advice for how we can hold space for our own experiences and practice a better sense of collective well-being. Janessa, welcome to Body Kindness.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh gosh, I'm so grateful to talk with you. As I was mentioning when I was talking with Sabrina about yoga, Dr. Sabrina Strings in the previous episode, I was talking about how yoga saved my life and what I learned from that conversation. And it took me to listen again because she told me on the show. Basically, we had very different experiences with yoga, and it took my re-listen to actually let that sink in. And, and so I'm so grateful for us to have a conversation to figure out where we're at, really examine histories and how can we all work together to do better and really, just be more in community with helping to make life better and how yoga fits into all of that. But, and then there's also the element of the listener question that I hope we can get to throughout our conversation. But before we do that, love the work that you do. And when I read the post on your Facebook page, I just have to say thank you for the very clear and very simple 4-point call to action specifically to white women. Make it easy because it's sad that you have to, but we need the Cliff's Notes on racism, right? Remedial racism, remedial anti-racism work. It's sad, but true. And I'm including myself in that. So can we start there? We start the conversation with you and your work. Okay, let's go.
Absolutely. All right. So for those who don't know, Janessa Mondestin, I'm a yoga teacher and I'm a yoga therapist. And I've been in the wellness business for about 13 years. Mm-hmm. And as long as I've been in the wellness industry, I've always occupied white spaces. Mm. And the idea of like whiteness and wellness work together, but I was other, had a lot of re-education to do, not just in the fitness business, but being an IIN as a health coach.
People have called that the $10,000 diet plan or something like very expensive, very white led.
Very white led. Absolutely.
So it's so important to see that you've been occupying these white led wellness spaces that are racist and horrible to be in.
And so it was constantly being the educator amongst so many people and finding that resistance and telling people what to do. And so I realized we just need to make it a lot more simpler. Mm-hmm. And then I got into yoga because I thought yoga inclusive. This is everyone. This is from India. And I did a diverse teacher training in New York City, which was full of microaggressions because it was led by someone who didn't do the work. And they really, that shifted. And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to be the studio owner. I'm going to be the teacher trainer. I'm going to be the yoga therapist. And once again, I put the weight on my shoulders and went for, all the accreditation, all the certifications to hold space for other people and educate. And then I wound up being asked to come to Yoga International to present. And I was like, oh my God, Diane Bondi and all these, and Amber Carnes and blah, blah. And it was beautiful on the surface because when you type in yogainternational.com, you're like, wow, look at the diversity. This is where I want to be part of. But then when you get inside the organization, I'm the only woman of color that works for the organization.
Joy Cox, who's really involved in health at every size, and she's got a book coming out. Yeah. I was on the board with her for Association for Size Diversity and Health. And she would say, I don't want to be the only chocolate chip in the cookie. And that metaphor just resonated. So you were the chocolate chip in the cookie, basically. The only chocolate chip in the cookie. Okay.
Only chocolate. Right. So then I said, oh, we got a lot of work to do inside of the structures of wellness. That's how we get in, is go there. So I started doing consulting. I started doing consulting for yoga studios. I started doing consulting for yoga teachers. And now I started doing consulting for Yoga International. So that's where I am now. That's what brings me to the space now. So a lot of times people are like, I've never heard of you. I've never seen you before. And I'm like, I have been a fan of Desiree Adaway. I've been a fan of so many different people who have been getting me through, but also passing the work on to them, right? Like right now, today, Desiree Adaway is doing her equity audit at Yoga International. And this is how we build the conversation and we draw out the conversation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The work is so important because last summer I presented at the White Stigma conference. It's an international conference that happens every other year. And I was presenting about how to get your message heard in the media when all the media wants to talk about is diet and weight loss and, diet culture stuff. But there were some really good workshops around social justice and change, and that it has to be system structures, laws, and policies create significant change. And that's why you need marginalized voices, people of color within the organization, getting paid by the organization, becoming lawmakers, right?
Sitting on the council, sitting in the leadership, executive branches of that organization. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to just offer you this space and platform. I know we talked about a series of issues.
So many.
And you could just say, point one, Rebecca, and we'll just keep going from there. So how would you like to engage in conversation so that we can all learn and grow and do better together?
Yeah. So originally the conversation was about Ayurveda and this diet culture and the conversation of right versus wrong and good versus bad. And so I want to preface that first, because a lot of times we hide underneath these philosophies and we bring our baggage to the philosophy, and the books say nothing of that to substantiate the stupid philosophies that we come up with or the bastardized and whitewashed philosophies that we come up with, because we're really dealing with our own microaggressions. So we talked about Ayurveda, and Ayurveda is literally it means the wisdom of life. And that means that everyone on this planet is individualized, is specialized, is unique, and one size cannot fit all. So let's go from there. So, and this is indigenous, ancient, documented culture from India. And so sometimes we use this westernized culture, not we, I'm saying we as a collective of yoga teachers who sometimes are just not educated enough, have not invested enough in their education, have not spoken to the elders in the community, right? Of people of sound judgment and sound education. And we just take what we've always known, add this little bit of spice to it, and then make it a teacher training. And then I can teach that. Yeah, I can just.
And you probably added a little bit of diet culture, right? Lose weight.
Yeah.
And that, I think, it's the crux. And without rereading the listener question, what I know from the listener question is it's a higher weight white woman who's engaged in multiple teacher trainings. And so again, we take our lived experiences in the trainings, and there's clear pain because what she was experiencing, like literally ended up hating yoga, said, please, I want to fall in love with yoga again. And what it wasn't just about Ayurveda, but that it made me think about it, because I've even had this, is that diet culture, is that restrictive? She feels harm when she sees prescriptive weight stuff. And I was like, I've just been a student of yoga, haven't done teacher trainings. I've been harmed by like daily Om. I just have to mention, because I used to have to block all their face. They'd have a white woman in a bikini with 0 body fat percent doing a high plank on her knuckles. I think Yoga International should just remove food talk from trainings. And that's what made me think of Ayurveda. And I'm like, I don't know anything about it, which is why I need to talk about it more. But I know enough that it came from India and that white people probably did something bad with it. And I don't necessarily think that even though you're a higher weight white person, I don't think that because of the race privilege, I don't think that I could answer that question without truly knowing and respecting that there is an indigenous origins that we have probably screwed up. And also for that listener idea, how do you practice compassion of not everything in here might be for me, and the pain I'm feeling is harms related to diet culture, to weight stigma, to the intersections of white supremacy and weight stigma. It's very, very nuanced in this whole thing. And I felt in my gut that I could feel where the listener was coming from, that there is something very wrong to me to call for, we'll just take it out of there. Some seemed like a very fleeing, fear-based fleeing answer that wasn't correct.
I think that half the battle there is also quoting who your sources are when you're giving out your information. So the problem, the situation that happens there is just a glimpse of what's going on in teacher trainings in general. Is that there is no sourcing of information. Like, where did you get that fact from? Where did you get that information from? My guru told me. Well, who's your guru? And what book did that come out of? You know what I mean? And was that a translation of Sanskrit? Because you speak English, you don't speak Sanskrit. So is that your interpretation? Mm-hmm. So a lot of these things get mixed up in conversation. It gets mixed in the translation. And I think it goes back to, can we find someone who's indigenous of that culture? Can we have them speak on their culture instead of having someone else remix it and throw it out there and say that this is law?
And so what we wind up doing with that is create transparency, because people want to know what's the inner workings of, that was the whole point of yoga. What's the inner workings of all of this? And so therefore, why are we now sheltering and being gatekeepers of the information and not passing on the information? Because we want it to be centered on us, right? We want it to be centered on just the person who's speaking. And this is where my dilemma comes out with, how did you choose the person that's speaking for this culture? Mm-hmm. Oh, another white woman. Oh, I see. So we're back to centering whiteness again in wealth. And so it becomes full circle, right? It goes back to like my first teacher training, like, love her, good-hearted person. She's not bad, but what she did was microaggressions again, was like, oh, did you think about everyone who's in the audience? No, you just thought about, I want to be center stage. I want to be center stage. So she created the shopping cart of different teachers, and the different teachers talked about different topics. And the topics were like, wow, really? The one person of color, the only Black woman on there is talking about anatomy and biomechanics. She doesn't know philosophy. She can't teach anything else. Like, we need to broaden out the gamut. And that, again, goes back to being triggered. It goes back to having trauma. It goes back to being microaggressions. And so I was just like, I have to go create this. I have to dig myself into literally in the heart, in the center of the organization, and start to create change from within.
And is there a change happening right now?
There is change happening right now.
Do you want to talk about the change, or?
I'd love to talk about the change. So now what I've actually done, because I came in as a producer. I was first a presenter and came in as a producer because I was like, oh, I want to change the landscape of equity, not just diversity. It doesn't mean you got one, oh, diverse, yay, right? It really means about equity with everyone across the platform, pay scale, diversity, equity in marketing dollars, right? Because we can't always see Rocky Heron as the only, and Tiffany Cruikshank as the only people who are of diversity on the platform being promoted. It's how are we promoting everyone across the board? It's all underrepresented minorities. How can we have no South Asian people speaking about the Bhagavad Gita? This is Hindus' Bible.
Book.
Yeah. Can they talk about it? Can they talk about the philosophy of asana? And so we're building that out now. And so it's not just being on the production side. Again, it's not about being on the production side, what the outward facing thing is. I actually put in the pitch for like, we need a director of equity, inclusivity, and diversity. And they were like, I don't know anybody better but you. And I'm like, yes, I hear you. But we need to now look at other people who can come into the organization and teach the unconscious bias, teach that through all the processes. How can we have no video production, no creatives of color? Just think about it, right? How can we have no one from product development of color on here, right? Or how come we don't know about them, right? So, and who is advising the executive council? Who is talking to people when we're looking for investments? How come we're not broadcasting that we are diverse, even when we go out there looking for more money for investment capital, right? And who are we reaching out to? And so the best part about what we're doing at Yoga National is we're also holding our vendors, our partners, and our presenters accountable to the same values.
Yes.
So it can't be a particular person who, because he thinks he's holier than thou, can treat certain people like crap because I'm sanctified in the holy grace of yoga. Right? It's like, no, you actually have to treat everybody along our value systems. So we're extending this out, not just within ourselves, but also with everyone that we partner with. I'm excited about that with Yoga International. And we're redoing things. We're going back with a fine-tooth comb over things that we've done and said, ooh, now with that new lens, I can see how this hurts. Let's pull that. Let's find the right person to talk about that and have the right person talk about that in a way that I'm literally talking about, from courses to classes to little, challenges to the way we perceive things. Your welcoming email to Yoga International is a white woman-centered wellness. How about international? Let's show diversity in an international landscape, not just one white woman saying, welcome to the club.
Oh, I know, right? That be the change you want to see in the world, Yeah. And it's definitely a systems and structures level improvement. I love the idea of holding the people you do business with accountable. That is so important. And anything that you can do to hold teacher training programs and certifications and CEUs accountable.
Now we're going to Yoga Alliance.
Okay. All right.
Now we're going to Yoga Alliance. Now we're talking about, obviously, there were structures in place before that really hindered them having this conversation, but they obviously were lagging in that because people who don't know, Yoga Alliance is the governing body that registers yoga teachers.
Got it.
It does not certify yoga teachers. You cannot be a certified yoga teacher with this global organization. It's just a registry. And so the reason why they feel like, because you're just a registry, you get to pay me to be on the registry list. Hello? That sounds like if you pay me, you can vote.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They have states that are like that. You have to pay a poll tax to actually go out there and vote. So basically what you're saying is you won't identify me in your structure until I pay you. That's wrong. We're all yoga teachers. You need to stand up and advocate for us. So there is that committee group that they created, which to me felt a little bit like fluff. Like, we just want to do something busy work. And I'm like, where's the productivity of it?
Yeah. Check a box, right?
Yeah. Check a box. So where's your leadership council? I don't see anyone in your leadership council that is of color. And we're talking about yoga here. So we're still fighting that fight. And we're fighting that fight also with IAYT, which is for yoga therapists, which is similar to Yoga Alliance. So now it's like, you want us to change structures in yoga studios? We need you to change structures in these governing bodies that also tell us you're certified, you're not certified. You're registered, you're not registered. It can't be one without the other.
If I can just say one thing, I'm thinking from my perspective. So being a registered dietitian, there's a certifying, you keep up your board exams, but the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is like, they've been saying diversity stuff for forever. And there's actually fellow dietitians who collaborated to form Diversify Dietetics to help dietitians get through their internships, because they not only to get an internship, but they endure racism within the profession that's almost all white. And then American College of Sports Medicine, where my exercise physiologist certificate is through, it's totally, white centered and weight loss focused and, exclusionary, doesn't really do enough to make people actually want to take care of their bodies. As a trauma-informed dietitian, and probably about half my clients have an eating disorder and recovery from an eating disorder. The eating disorder recovery field is really messed up for higher weight people, for people of color. And it's baked in. And so when you don't have several marginalized identities, right, at the board level, controlling education decisions, having the power, right, this is where you end up with pain, hurt, suffering, lack of access to care that people need.
And lack of accountability to the people doing the harm. And this is where it goes back to the post that I wrote. Which is like, if you are a person in leadership of influence, you have power over people, pick up this book. and do the work. Not, I picked up this book. This is great information. I'm going to pass this on to you and reteach this to you like teacher training does. It is, hey, no more than 3 to 5 people come in, at least come in, and let's hold each other accountable for the unconscious bias and what we can do about it. Right. And then instead of just sitting there and knowing information, because we could look, I've got shelves and shelves of books and I've got shelves and shelves of data in my head. But what am I doing with that data? Go back into the work, find someone to hold you accountable, preferably someone who does not look like you. To say, hey, this is because you need to bounce the ideas off of people. You don't know that you're doing harm till someone says to you, hey, that doesn't make me feel safe. You can't say, I create safe spaces. That's not for me to decide. That's for the person who's in the space to say, okay, I feel safe here, or I don't. You won't know that until you interact with someone who's going to hold you accountable for what you do.
I'm thinking specific to yoga and about how it's grounded in being humble. And common humanity, you know, so that's what gave me that thought, is because I'm imagining that if the structure for yoga therapists is not already at end game level.
Thank you.
So much harm.
Can you see the logic? Could you see the logic? And I'm literally trying to break this down to you and your audience, like in a way that's like, see this? Okay, that makes sense. Now look at you. Does that make sense? What do we need to do? Because I go to their symposiums and I see nothing else but more white-centered wellness. They're on stage. You know, they're talking to us about how to deal with trauma information. And I'm like, people informed. Everyone has trauma. It shows up in different ways. We identify with the trauma. We think that this is our culture of trauma, but maybe it's not. How we're supposed to be helping people dig deep. Are you digging deep? Look at the audience that you're bringing in. Are you digging deep? Just look at the board of councils. Are you digging deep? Are you the yoga? And so again, it goes back to the very simplistic parts of really yoga. It is, how can I be accountable for the thoughts and my actions? Bingo. That is the first 2 sutras. How can, now that we're going to start, how can I be accountable?
Yeah. Is that why you chose White Fragility as because there's a lot that you could recommend, but because at the core, it's the fragility that brings the fear that keeps you in inaction.
Yeah. And that's why people do book clubs. This is why people read the book.
That was me. I'll admit it. I read it when it first came out. Oh, it's going to be good. Devoured it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say didn't do shit, but I feel like I didn't do shit, you know?
Yeah. And so then you got to go back and say, was that enough? And this is the accountability part, right? This is accountability enough. Did you go enough? Did you go deeper enough? Did you look at the systems? Did you look at the people you interacted with? Did you look at how you do business? Did you look at who you amplified, who you lifted up? So before I got into wellness, I was in the banking business, right? So I was in corporate banking. I was a financial accountant. I have an MBA in financial accounting. And we always talked about in banking, another white-centered space, right? Working off of Wall Street, right? Was you need people who are going to lift you up, pull you up because they're higher up. You need people across from you, right? Peers, and you need to pull someone else up. And in our wellness business, we don't have that structure. Who's pulling you up? Who's amplifying you from the sides? And who are you going to bring up from underneath? That is also part of building community. And community, if you show me your community, I can see what you're accountable to. If you show me who you're amplifying, I can see who you're accountable to, right? And then I can go down and say, well, what's that message in this yoga business, in this wellness business? What does that mean to your mission, to your values, to your ethos? Could you tell me what those are? And most of the time, people don't even draft those things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, if you don't even draft a mission statement or an ethos or a value system, how are you even making right decisions? What is it based off of? Likes, familiarity? You have baggage in both of those columns. How do you proceed to be equitable?
I'm listening to you and I'm painting this picture in my mind of watching you do your work. And I'm just having this thought. I was like, I wonder what she does for self-care because this has to be exhausting.
It is. It is. I garden a lot.
Oh,
I'm always in a garden, and
Mm-hmm.
I cover the entire circumference of my house with all the ingredients of thieves oil.
Mm.
And I love being with the earth and the soil. I'm in the house that I grew up in, and my grandmother raised me. And so she started all these gardens. And when you talk about you want to build the lineage, my grandmother is third grade education, had 20 children, and brought all 20 children from Haiti off the profits of a farm to United States. They're either a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a nurse practitioner. And they look at me like, you don't really have a real job because I don't go to work. Like I work from home. I don't get up and get dressed and wear a suit anymore. They're like, you don't have a real job. And I'm like, but I'm making impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I stand on all those people's shoulders. And when you talk about hard work, being an immigrant, coming into the country, being teased for your accent, being teased for your culture. We came in the 80s when people were like, oh, Haitians had AIDS. And that's how AIDS epidemic passed. It was in the newspaper. It was in the New York Post. It was in the New York Times. It was an awful time to come into. But now that I look at it, now I look back at it and I'm like, we grew stronger from adversity. All these challenges made us work harder in our history, in our culture, and then be able to communicate our importance. And that's the moment that we're in right now, even post George Floyd, and even with all the people in between, is doing this work helps us to face our fears. And that's why I chose that book about white fragility, was like, okay, they talk about this white fragility, which might be seeds inside the soil of white guilt. And that's a tough topic. I love how they didn't make you feel bad, but they had you open your eyes and say, you know, maybe I've said that nursery rhyme, did not know the background of that nursery rhyme. Maybe I had that thought and I did that work. And, you know, in the sea of like the Amy Coopers was happening at the same time. It was like, where, and I'm going to sit there and say, and I ask people, where were you in Amy Cooper? Or you witnessed an Amy Cooper, but did nothing about it at work or in the yoga studio, or when you were passing out false information on diets in Ayurveda. And again, I challenge people to really do the homework sometimes, do the legwork, do the education so that you can be empowered enough so that when you do come to a teacher training or you do take an additional course, you can ask better questions to the teacher. See, the other thing that happens with white supremacy or, you know, the centering of white bodies in wellness happens because we are changing our agency when we go to trainings. You walk into a training, you think, I don't know anything. This person knows. And we deny our intuitions. We deny our inner truths, right? And that's not yoga, by the way. That power structure is not yoga. You're giving up the agency that you have and you're absorbing someone else's information. Two things to always be careful with: bad doctors and bad teachers. They will mess up your life for all, right? A bad doctor will really mess you up. And a bad teacher will really mess you up too. So be careful where you get your information and ask for their data. I think that's why they hated me in my teacher training, because I was like, where'd you get that? What book was that in? Why do I have, you know, Xerox dittos? Where's the real book? Where'd you get the info from? And I want people to be empowered enough to do that. You know, and that's how you change the status quo. Just like when they talk about dismantling systems, well, you have to know the system to be able to dismantle it. You have to know the rule books of yoga to be able to remix it, or asana practice, right? If you're in fitness, you had to know the idea of overload principle to be able to design a sequence of events for sets and reps and tempo and time, right? You need to know those principles before you go out there and possibly injure someone with a weight over their head, right? So start with the books. Start with knowing what the rule books say, right? And then knowing who wrote those rule books, because sometimes the aggressions are in the writings themselves, right?
Yeah.
Just like the Constitution means well, but there are microaggressions in the Constitution. I'm asking people to do this really hard self-study. And this comes all into the idea of one of the tenets of yoga is self-study. So we know our truth because we feel in our gut. But we've been denied so long. Don't trust your gut. Trust the teacher. Trust the person who's talking. Trust the person who has the amplification. Trust the person with the mic, right? This is why this movement of amplifying other people, pass the mic on, right? Share the mic is so important, because we're not always right. And if we're wrong, just say it and learn and move on.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the conversation. I'm grateful that when the reader question came through, like even a couple months ago, that there was something in there that made me want to push pause and explore, because I knew what my gut reaction was, and it was like this kind of fear of like, oh yeah, I could see how it could be harmful to be, talking about food and Ayurveda and what does it all mean anyway, right? But then what I realized why the pause was necessary is because it was truly my own ignorance, right? And that it's okay to not know and be a listener and ask questions, right? And, a fundamental principle of practicing body kindness is like nobody can tell you what body kindness is or isn't, because it's about being good to yourself and connecting and finding your inner caregiver and letting that lead you on your path. And so all your lived experiences, your historical experiences, your ancestry, that's all going to come through to you and what body kindness is to you. And so when you're in that teacher training or you're exploring something and the topic of food comes up, first, if we can like respect differences in others. So I'm learning from this person has limitations. They might be saying some things that are helpful and some things that are unhelpful. And if I'm clear on my values, is that I don't have to buy into 100% of everything somebody else is saying, because, for my self-preservation and protection, topics around food and yoga are triggering. Well, know how to care for yourself, but don't assume that if there's conversations about looking at vegetarian or understanding or exploring Ayurveda more, if it's done correctly from a leader who truly knows and cites their stuff, maybe part of you, your inner caregiver, could bring you to an open mind so that you sift what helps you and what doesn't help you. And then maybe you have a different experience with it. You don't have to be the practitioner, but maybe you're less afraid because you got to a point of open mind, open heart.
Yeah.
And isn't that more about what yoga is about, not just asana?
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because there's nothing in the books that say it has to look a very specific way. If you eat hummus, you're closer to God. It doesn't say that.
Yeah.
It does say, depending on your own specific constitution, and everyone's constitution is different as your DNA, that if something doesn't work for you, it's vile inside your body. Maybe it might be better for you if you had it cooked, boiled, broiled, with this other food, supplemented by that. So it winds up being like exactly like a nutritional guide. Can you figure out what works for you? If you want milk, but you can't drink cow's milk, maybe you might have almond milk. Maybe that's a better constitution for you, right? And so I go back and my experience with Ayurveda first was because I was diagnosed with lupus. And when I was diagnosed with lupus and I was on tons of medication, working corporate banking, my Ayurveda practitioner, who was also an MD, said, I don't think you can keep doing your job and survive this lupus.
The job is the poison.
The job is the poison.
And no amount of Ayurveda is going to save you.
You could keep taking all these herbs and it's not, right? And I had to make a decision. I took 6-month leave and he was like, I want you to work with me for 6 months and just get to a bench, like a baseline that you can live off of. And I had a trainer and I said, oh my God, you people make a real living doing this? Holy cow, how can I be part of this? And in 6 months, I got a lot better. I got off of my medication, off of the hydroxychloroquine, which, someone's promoting to be an anti-vaccine, anti-flu coronavirus vaccination. And I sat there and said, I don't want to go back to corporate banking. My gut has always known this, but I was like, no, I have to be successful. I have this VP. I do this, I do that. And honestly, it just wasn't working for me. So now leaving that triggering situation to jump into another, I thought wellness. Oh, I want to be part of that. And I'm right, exactly. It was like, no, I'm in it again. So this is a deeper conversation than just whatever industry that you're in. It's about, who do I give my agency to? Who do I decide to have authority over me? And what role do I want to play inside of that? And I went into Ayurveda and I was just like, oh, snap, the book is saying the same thing with diet, with culture, with nutrition, not diet, nutrition. What's going to nourish you where you are right now? And it changes by season. And you know what I mean? What you eat in fall won't eat in summer, might not eat that in spring, because it doesn't serve your needs of your body and your climate where you are right now, at the time of your life right now. If it doesn't serve you, let it go. And I went to teacher training, and the woman came up to me and says, oh my God, you're this particular type of body type, right? And so therefore you need coconut oil all over you. I love coconut. I love coconuts, but I cannot put the oil on my skin because I break out like crazy. Right? And so I'm like, really? She's like, yes, you need to resolve your issue with coconut oil and turmeric all over you. This is Ayurveda? Because this is not what my doctor told me. Oh, you doesn't know, because I came from India and that's what was told to me. And I was just like, oh, this is the bullshit. No, excuse me. This was a crap. And you know what I mean? I was just like, oh, okay. I'm dealing with the same thing here. The next day, people are coming to the training with coconut oil and turmeric and, you know what I mean, sesame oil. And I'm like, oh my God, they believe it's lore because this person told them, and they had the mic. They had the seat at the table. They wanted to appease them and give up their agency. And crazy to see everyone all oily and spicy than that.
And it's just so interesting, right? Because like of how people get followers, like is that passing our DNA through religion? I even wonder, but because it's like, what, it's back to trusting yourself and your own intuition, and that your lived experiences, your gut feelings, that's your true self. That's your inner caregiver talking, and finding workable things and decisions, or they can be about discovery and exploration, but you're also allowed to say, I'm having these feelings that this isn't going to work for me, and that I want to trust that. I want to listen to that and let that be okay. And so I personally don't like it when people take everything I say and assume this is a rule. I'm holier than thou, and this is a rule that I said that you have to follow in order to buy into what I am trying to put out in the world. I'm a human. I may make mistakes or do something that's not for you. Just discard it, please.
Right. And so that's why I talk about, when you're going to do a training, when you're going to teach, you also have to explain, I'm only talking to hold space for you. That space in between is for you to decide the variance of an eighth, a quarter. I'm going to take a little bit more of this, and I'm going to live a little bit more there. I'm going to do a little bit more of this. I'm going to do a little bit more of that. I can't prescribe that for you. You have to figure out what resonates with you and prescribe it for yourself. This is your life. It is your journey. You don't give up your agency to be a full functioning human being who came in whole and completely perfect. Whatever you look like, whatever you are, you're perfect right now. Okay? You're perfect right now. Let's just support and nourish your perfection right now. That's Ayurveda. That's the conversation of yoga and Ayurveda. They're sister sciences. They work in conjunction with one another. You can't be belligerent and aggressive and abrasive in one, and then empathy, we are all one in the other. It doesn't work. They equally have to, they don't balance each other. They amplify one another.
That's so beautiful. And it makes, again, why it's not just about asana, and why we need to change the systems and structures from the inside out, because it's quite literally possible that what is bothering you and making you uncomfortable, those feelings are absolutely valid. But is it more likely that the roots are more related to white supremacy and co-opting of originality?
Yes.
That's where the real pain is.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And sourcing and transparency. And that's because we have systems all around us that are like big buildings and institutions, and you don't know who's running it. And we say the man, but you don't know who the man is.
Right? And you go for the most popular, or right?
Uh-huh.
We're humans, emotional creatures. I say in Body Kindness, we're feeling creatures who think. So, and that FOMO is real. So I don't want to miss out,
Right.
and if you end up going in the most powerful, if you haven't done your work to make sure they've done their work, you're going to get a watered down.
Exactly. So ask your team. I mean, I sit there and I ask people, when I did teacher training, I've asked people, I interviewed people for teacher training. So basically that means people came in and said, I will pay you $3,000 for your 200 hour. I'm in. And I'm like, no, you're not. You can hold on to your money. I'm going to interview you to see if you're worth being in my teacher training, because I have to hold space for you. It is a symbiotic relationship that we're building here. Out of 22 people who want to give me $3,000, I only pick 8. And there are a lot of pissed off people who were like, how dare you? I'm paying. I'm like, I know that ideology that you just had is why I don't want you in the group. Right? Because you're going to do trauma to everybody else who wants to grow and be their own guru. They're not going to look at me to be like, can you keep taking me along? No, I want you to learn how to create agency for yourself in your body at all times, so that no matter the BS that comes from left and right, you can turn around and say, that's not for me. That doesn't work for me. I'm more empowered. I'm standing my ground, right? I know what's good for me, and I am whole. I'm deserving. I'm respectful. I'm respectful of you and your differences. I love my uniqueness, and we both belong to be here.
That's so, so beautiful. I love, the whole idea of belonging. I think that is also at the root of what is missing in all these exclusionary spaces that have just become about corporate dollars and power. We've got to pivot away from that and think about common humanity, belonging, inclusivity, and being humble again, listening and learning and collaborating. And just really kind of, again, your feelings and emotions are valid, but lean into that. And that's not your whole self. A part of me feels this or that way, but maybe there's something to learn from the pause, from the step back, from asking questions before being so reactionary right away. And
and not just in being reactionary in just the emotions, but where do you put your purchase power? Where do you spend your money? Where do you spend your time? Who you do business with, where do they spend their money? Where do they spend their time? Because that's where you're going. The accountability factor to me in America means, where are you spending your dollars and cents? Because you work hard for your money, right? Everyone does. And you're going to put your money only where you find your value. Only where. So if I see what you value, that's how I know I can keep you accountable. That's why I go back to like, oh, okay, well, your passion project is, I want everyone to feel welcome and whole and deserving, but we only have Lululemon in our stores, in our yoga shop. Really?
The see-through skinny white woman yoga pants for $100. Don't even get me started.
So your message, your mission statement, your value statement, who you are. Now, these are all reflections of you. This is how I start to hold you accountable. They're not even sustainable. You know what I mean? So I go back and this is how I look at systems. And this is how I dissolve the systems and build a more integrated system and say, okay, let's see all the ways in which you're spending your money and holding your business accountable. Then I can do that with yoga studios. I can do that with people. Well, who are you following and what books are you purchasing? What trainings are you being a part of? And what do they stand for? And how does that feel with your value system? Right? Same thing that's going on with the protests right now. And this is the epitome of the protests right now is, hey, you want to stop this violence? Then we need to hold you accountable for where you're spending your dollars, Governor so-and-so, legislator so-and-so, mayor so-and-so, because this is endemic inside of the system. Same thing happens with even the nutrition industry, right? I did a brief stint doing private labels for the old Pathmark, and we had to build a new organic white label, right, inside of Pathmark. And we would do things with ConAgra and all these like big brand names, and who basically paste their labels on other people's products. It's just the same thing. New label, new brand, cool, put it out there for that. And then I'm sitting there saying, well, if it's still high fructose corn syrup and you turn it around to say it's dextrose.
To confuse them. Oh, that's fine. That ingredient's fine.
That's better. And I'm like, that's not good. That's still talking about our values as an organization. And now where's Pathmark? It's gone. So it's about that conversation of shifting now.
Yeah. And you were able to make those impacts because you were within the system and structure. And so the decision makers have to be open enough to take meaningful action.
Yeah. But they weren't, though, because they were like, we have to let you go. You're revolutionizing and we have to kind of let you go. And I was just like, man, I wish I had that book, White Fragility, now to actually look at and say, hey, this is the reason why we can't go deeper. We can't make conscious capitalism. We can't make conscious change here.
Yeah. And I would encourage any white female listener to read White Fragility, but don't just read it, do the accountability group. And that is in the show notes where you can read Janessa's and, very simple 4-step process to do that. And also find and follow you and recommend your work. Buy Black. What else do we want to say? Swift actions, hopes and dreams for people.
Besides doing the work internally within not just your thoughts, but into your family, right? Into the people that you keep around in your circle. Definitely look into not just Buy Black, but Black and local. Look at people in your neighborhood, in your neighboring towns, places that you can easily drive to and support any minority business at this point so that they all can continue to do the work. Buy the book, White Fragility, or any one of the books that talks about how to, my other favorite book is My Grandmother's Hands.
Oh, yes. When we were talking trauma, I wanted to go there. Yes.
That is my favorite book to go through. Right? And so buy the book and put it on your Facebook page. Who else wants in? I got you on the book. Literally pay it forward. It's a karmic energy.
Yes. And do the somatic experiences.
Make it part of your daily life. If it's just journaling, make it part of journaling as your daily life. Just a meditation, but accountability with journal, great. Because meditation itself is just not enough. You still need to do the work, right? And find someone to hold you accountable. Buy Black and buy Black local. So that is incredibly important to empower the economic structures of disparages that's going on in minority communities right now. And then literally hold people accountable. Talk about it. Make it a norm to talk about this accountability. It shouldn't be a hush thing. It should be open conversation, warm and inviting. And if people feel angst, it's a sign. It's a sign that people might not be ready for it. And that is the person that you're going to say, when you're ready, I'm here for you. When you're ready, I can hold space for you. And keep doing your work. Keep doing your self-care practice.
Yep. And repeat over and over and over again.
Repeat. Looking at your power structures within the people that you influence in your organizations.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for the conversation. And I'm excited, selfishly on a personal level, to see the next steps of our relationship. But I know you've helped me and a lot of other people. And it's such, you're a gift to the world. So I just have the deepest gratitude to you.
So much. Thank you for reaching out, seeing me, and amplifying me. That is also quite important too. So thank you.
And that's our show. The podcast is made possible with support from listeners. Please donate to help offset production costs at gofundme.com/bodykindness. And please rate and review the show when you have a moment. It really matters. Let's keep the conversations going on Facebook. Search Body Kindness and request to join the group for Body Kindness readers and listeners. Have a question for us to answer on a future episode? Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question. Body Kindness books and audiobooks are available wherever books are sold. To request a signed print copy, visit bodykindnessbook.com/order. For other questions about this podcast, please email info@bodykindnessbook.com.